In this HR Tech Talk by HRTech Series, we have with us Beaumont Vance, Senior Vice President of Data, Analytics, and AI at Paychex, here to discuss the growing benefits of driving HR cycles with better data and intelligence. Beaumont, it's so good to have you here today. It's such an interesting time to be in HR Tech, and with all the hullabaloo around AI and the latest innovations, I think there's so much happening and there's so much more to look forward to. So before we dive in, why don't you take a couple of minutes to first tell the audience about yourself and, of course, more about your role at Paychex?
Sure, happy to. And Paroma, thank you for having me. I agree with you. This is a very exciting time to be in this field. So my name is Beaumont Vance. I started life actually working in a small retail shop that my father owns. So being at Paychex is actually coming full circle for me a little bit, working with small, medium-sized businesses. When I went after college, I actually started out my career in the insurance industry, and then was in there for a little while and then moved on to tech, and I worked for Sun Microsystems. I know cloud computing is a hot topic right now. I actually was working at Sun and on one of the teams when we were developing the original cloud computing, which back then was actually called Grid, also which failed, and Sun is no longer with us. They were the ones who first pioneered this idea of being able to just plug in and get compute power. After I left Sun, I went to Fidelity Investments, and that's where I really started to get into hardcore data analytics and data science. And we had a research department that was doing a lot of work with early AI attempts, and a lot of the tools that we're using today actually arose from work that was going on around that time. Then I left Fidelity, went to TD Ameritrade, was at Charles Schwab for a little while. Then I left, went into private equity for a bit, did AI, built a small company, and that was AI and data based. And then when I was just selling the company, I got a call from Paychex, and they said, hey, we're looking to really get very serious about AI. We've been doing it for years, but we want to step it up, and we're going to do some really big, exciting things. And that was music to my ears. I love nothing more than white space to draw in. And the thing that really attracted me a lot about the position was that I had a broad latitude. So when you mentioned my title, I'm head of data and analytics and artificial intelligence. And those three really, to me, are not separable. And one thing I liked about Paychex is they had a profoundly deep understanding of the interplay between data and artificial intelligence, and how one cannot survive well without the other. And their vision was very clear about the future. And so I took the job, and right now I'm responsible for all those things, creating AI platforms, installing AI platforms, but also making sure that our vast wealth of data can be leveraged and used with those AI tools for the benefit of our clients, and also making sense out of that so that we can drive the business and provide insights to help our clients drive their business as well.
Absolutely. I think you've had a very interesting, robust journey in the tech market. There's so many learnings you could probably share, but that in another conversation. We'd love to, dive into a little bit about Paychex, a little bit to know about Paychex, most recent enhancements, and, of course, your thoughts on HR tech. How is Paychex moving forward in terms of, their roadmap for 2025, as well as what is trending in HR tech as an overview that you'd like to highlight upon before we dive deeper?
Yeah, I think it helps to contextualize where we are in HR and where we are in technology to understand the changes and the way we see those changes. So first off, with every technological breakthrough that we've had over the past 60, 70 years, one of the great impacts of it is that it allows smaller businesses who don't have lots of money and lots of resource to be able to basically punch above their weight. And I know growing up in a small retail store, it was always a David and Goliath struggle, because the really big, back in the day before we had computers, they could have, teams of accountants, and they could have teams of lawyers, and they could have teams of HR professionals. And you needed lots of people to be able to do certain things in business. And that's still true today, although more and more we're getting technology tools that, for $300 a month, you don't have to hire a team of data scientists. Or you don't have to hire a team of HR specialists, or maybe even a team of compliance specialists. And so what we're seeing with AI is that one of the last areas that we were able to deal with effectively with compute was with language and human interaction. We had a lot of great compute power up until 2015, 16, 17. But there was no real good way that you could say, tell me what all of the regulations across the United States say about this, because you couldn't deal with words. You can't put words into spreadsheets or most, it's just impossible. And now what we're seeing with AI is that it's unleashed that capacity that we can suddenly deal with human language and human communication. And there's no other field where this is more important than in human resources, because it's a human endeavor, and it's about humans talking to other humans and working with other humans, and about regulations and about contracts and a lot of things that are just words. So we see AI sort of creating all of these capabilities across the HR spectrum. One area that we've just rolled out recently is, of course, with recruiting, and we've got an AI recruiting platform, which I'm happy to get into detail with, but also HR analytics, which is being able to analyze the data you've got, predict when you're going to have turnover, get ahead of your staffing, understand what's happening with your staff, and be able to generate all this as if you had a data and analytics team at your company. But you don't need one these days. AI can actually provide all that for you at a small fraction of the cost.
Absolutely. So, what's been happening is, while every B2B technology vendor, be it in the MarTech space, sales tech, or like we're talking about the HR tech space in this conversation, everyone has an AI element or is about to release some AI powered features, because that's the in demand technology today. That's what teams are being forced to use, train themselves on. But what's really happening is, there's a little bit of a 50-50 split here. You have people who know how to use these technologies well and optimize it for their teams, no matter how big and expansive they are or distributed they are. Then you have this other area that's really this other whole landscape, or segment, that's talking about it but failing to optimize all of this effectively down the entire channel. It's not just about training. It's about implementing this at the grassroots level, but then everyone across the organization has to use it. For example, even a smaller company, you have your payroll manager releasing the payslip, but what if the user, as an employee, doesn't know how to use the system effectively to plan their taxes, or whatever it is? There's so many different elements that need to come together. So when you observe these features being added to HR tech or other technologies today, these AI powered enhancements, it calls for a lot of use of intel and data and the ability to draw from those insights. So, specific to HR teams, how do you think all of this can be brought together? Processes, technologies, training, everything to actually empower the entire HR cycle, from onboarding, offboarding, upkeep of the employees in the organization, everything put together. What is lacking today?
Yeah, Burma, it inadvertently hit on one of my favorite topics and passions here, which is really utilization rates and appropriate UX. And I think the challenge that you see with new technologies like AI, especially when they're very popular and hot, everybody wants to AI stuff. There was a period of time when blockchain was hot, and I had one executive came by and said, "Can we blockchain this?" And I was like, "What do you mean by blockchain this?" He goes, "I don't know. Can we AI the blockchain or blockchain AI?" And he wanted to use blockchain so badly without necessarily first thinking like what his practical purpose was. So our philosophy has always been that if you start with the problem that needs to be solved, say for example something like manual data entry, or say reviewing lots of resumes, right? And these are a problem for your employees. Nobody likes to do that drudgery of manual data entry and things like that, right? If you focus first on what the problem is, and then you ask yourself the question, what tools can I bring to bear to solve the problem? Then you roll those tools out to the people who are actually having to solve that problem. You get a very different type of reaction than if you try to force an AI system that doesn't solve any problem that they're aware of or that they're concerned about, and then have everybody go through training, and then try to force everybody to use it. If you provide a tool that's solving a real problem for the employees and it's designed the way the employees work, takes very little. They would do the training in their spare time, because they want their life to be easier, just like everybody does. Like, I always ask anybody who has an iPhone, how many hours of training did you go through to
To
use your
use it.
iPhone?
Mm.
And how many hours of training did you go through for the apps that you use every day? None. Why?
Right.
Because you're using the app to solve a problem, right? So we should look at it the same way Apple probably does. I don't know if that's how they think about it, but understand what your workers are doing, understand what their real problems are, understand what the real business problem is, and then find the tool that matches that very well, rather than trying to force fit things into the company.
Absolutely. So when you're looking at this entire HR tech optimization aspect, it's about choosing the right tool and ensuring that whatever is part of your tech stack is integrated into other business processes and systems. That's one area that I think is something that not a lot of teams get right, because there's a lot of disparate systems, disparate data, a lot of silos still being created. So what we'd like to dive into here is the entire HR tech sense, the sense of adoption, and how HR teams can effectively optimize it to drive better employee cultures, especially in B2B SaaS. Human resources in B2B SaaS is a little broken, especially now that you're seeing a lot of evolution, the move from work from home back to work from office. All of us have been called back, whether we like it or not. But it's
Mhm.
good. There's a positive part to it. There's, you're getting ready, you're going to work, you're interacting with your colleagues. But while this shift back to the workplace is coming in, and while there's this entire HR tech evolution, that's where all of these two pieces have to tie in together. The right tool, like you rightly said, identify your purpose or your problem area, and that will help you implement the right features or technologies at the right time. But you have to tie it into your culture. You have to understand what's missing in your landscape, in your market. So, can you talk about what is lacking in HR when it comes to B2B SaaS, the way you see it today, and how HR tech innovators or HR tech users can come together to bridge this gap?
Mm. Well, Paroma, you actually addressed one of the issues in your question, which is the lack of integration. And what we have is a lot of individual SaaS tools that don't integrate and don't speak to each other, and that all require separate training for every single different one. You have to learn the drop-down menu system and how they work and what you have to do in most of the different ones. I think the world's getting better in that we're starting to see more things integrate. Like, for example, you're seeing a lot of the AI resume readers and the HR recruiting copilot that we launched will, for example, integrate with any ATS system, right? So that you have automatic data flow, because data is really the most important thing. You can't have separate data sets in different places and have your tools work correctly and get correct answers. That's one. The one that fascinates me the most is I'm watching an escalating war, basically, in in recruiting and hiring. I think that's the area. And when we do surveys, that typically is number one or number two for all of the companies that we survey. Then everyone I talk to has difficulty finding talent. And interestingly, so I have a son who's graduating college right now, and so he's looking for his first job. And so he's on the other side and he's trying to get a job. And I work with recruiters, so I see both sides of this happening. And
Yeah.
what's happening is we're still using, we really have to rethink this. We're still using a mental model for recruiting that is at least 1,000 years old, maybe older. Because if you were in 1550 England and you were a blacksmith and you needed an assistant, how you would post a job, literally. You'd write it on a piece of paper and you'd go post it someplace where people could see it. And then you would wait until somebody saw that and they came to you, right? Well, we're still doing that. The only difference is we're doing it on a website and we're waiting for somebody to email us a resume instead of to, walk to the blacksmith shop and hand us one. And so we haven't changed our mental model on that. So that model is starting to break badly because the people who are applying for jobs are using AI to blast a lot more resumes. And so the recruiters who are receiving way too many resumes to review in person are having to use AI to screen the resumes. And so as they're screening the resumes, it's a machine selecting the people, right? And so the people who are pushing the resumes out know that machines are selecting them. So you're getting special consultants who are arising, who are teaching you how to tailor your resume so that it fits through the machine filters. And we've gotten to a point where you no longer have a person looking at a person and seeing if they're a match. What you have is a machine reading language sort of written for machine and making decisions on who gets through the filter. And to me, it's a broken process. And plus, what's happening is the number people are just trying to fix it by increasing the volume. So my
Yeah.
son, instead of sending out 100 resumes, is trying to figure out how to send out 10,000. And now the recruiters, instead of getting 100 resumes, are getting 10,000.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And there is a fix for it. And I mean, we have the solution. It's called Recruiting Copilot. It's one of the reasons I liked it. I knew this company before I came to Paychex, because this problem has fascinated me for a while, and I kind of saw this coming. Instead, what they have is a definitive database of every single worker in the United States. So instead of posting a job and waiting for somebody to come see it, what you do is you design what you're searching for. You tell the AI system exactly what you want, and it will return every single person in the United States, or globally actually, who fits that description. And so it puts the power back in the recruiter's hands, where the recruiter can start to look at what they want and then act. I think this is one of those areas that's emblematic of what happens when in HR. This is happening all over the place, where you have a technology where you're trying to improve an old manual process that didn't contemplate technology. And I think Henry Ford once said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would say a faster horse. If you need to go 70 miles per hour and commute to work every day, you can't ever improve a horse enough to go 60 miles per hour, right?
Yeah.
You need to completely rethink the paradigm, and you need to switch over, and you need to start embracing the car, or a different form. And the same thing is happening with HR, is where we have to question the paradigms that we're living in with this new technology, because it has given us so many more capabilities than we have ever had before, that we have the freedom now to rethink everything from the ground up.
And I think while AI is set to play a more impactful role across HR as well as HR tech, it's important for both recruiters as well as candidates to upskill in terms of how to write or create CVs and profiles that can meet those keywords, those requirements that can pique the interest of an AI powered platform, recruitment platform. That's one area that I don't think a lot of job seekers are very very open to or very knowledgeable about yet. That's still it's a gray area. A lot of like I think your son as well, you're figuring it out, but we're still in the zone where it's all trial and error. It's not
Yeah.
really like, it's all an experiment out there. So I think this is impacting job seekers as well as recruiters, because what's happening with recruiters, like you rightly said, you might be getting a larger volume of resumes, but then how do you create that human machine automation balance? You can't
Yeah.
leave it to the AI. I don't think, with the kind of conversations we've had, AI is quite fully there yet to just rely on the machine. I wouldn't want to do that. I would like to still manually look at what's been sent over and read it through, go through the profile on LinkedIn, maybe have an initial conversation with the person. This is if I put myself in the shoes of a recruiter. So when we talk about all of this, I'd love to know your thoughts about around the future impact of AI and generative AI. As you know, all these areas are still experimental, largely experimental across not just B2B SaaS, but every industry that's looking at implementing AI through different business areas or even HR. What are your thoughts on this?
I think you're right. I think that most of the technology we have are somewhat experimental, and there's a lot of issues we have to sort out. Not the least of which is ethical use of data, and the compliant use of data. And as you know, whenever we're sharing data, like even prompts that we're asking into a GPT or something, we're essentially putting data out into the universe if we're not careful about it. And I think you're right about the experimentation, because going back to my son as an example, as soon as he realized what's going on with the resume readers and whatnot, he starts doing A/B testing, because he doesn't know what's going to stick, and he doesn't
Yeah.
know what the readers are reading. So he has 3 or 4 resumes, and he sends them all out in different batches, and then he looks and sees which one's got the response, and then adapts. And it does take. I'm hoping that this system that we've got going actually breaks down, because you're right. At the end of the day, it has to be human to human, and especially with everything with HR, AI can do a lot of things. Mostly, what it can do is it can process information and spot patterns, and it can deal with data, but it really doesn't have any depth to it, and it'll never, in my estimation, be capable of understanding culture and nuance and personality and background and emotions like humans do. And all those things are vitally important, especially if you're trying to recruit really good talent. In the best case scenario, you're trying to recruit talent that has other options. And so it's more than just we have a job and it pays X. It
Yeah.
is, this is what we're about. This is what drives us. This is what our culture and our values are. This is the opportunity. This is why it's either exciting or very stable or whatever it may be that would be attractive to somebody. And right now the system is set up where you don't get to actually to to do that until the very, very end, until somebody has run a gauntlet of a whole bunch of machinery. And that's actually why I like to use AI that actually helps me go find people that actually fit the profile who are probably already employed and have the conversation so I can, so I can actually recruit them over and have a conversation with a one-on-one. And I think it's going to be the same way. What we'll see AI fitting in spots where it gets rid of repetitive work, drudgery, and where it provides insight and information. I mean, for example, I don't have this, but imagine if you had AI that was sort of monitoring all employee communications and just looking for people who were very, very upset,
Mm.
having great difficulty even that
Yeah.
day. And it didn't even tell you what they were upset about, but it just let somebody know
Yeah.
so that an HR professional could go have a conversation with them. I mean, think of how much pain, suffering, sorrow, and difficulties we could eliminate just by having a human being be taught, have a machine assist to say, you should act now here
Yeah.
and be able to go do that. And then use all these other skills that AI will never replace.
Yeah, I think as the marketplace evolves, it's very important for HR leaders to hear more about these best practices or tips as to how to optimize whatever technology they have to hit the right spot. These are actual pain areas. A lot of employees would be thankful for if someone just came up to them without them needing to reach out, especially if they're having a bad mental health day. So essentially, it all boils down to understanding what you can use it for. And I think as an industry, also coming to terms with what we'd like to do with AI. I think ethical AI is a big area. I think it's a debate as well. There are a lot of people who are for certain protocols and certain people who are not. So let's see how this space evolves. And Pumad, it's been a very interesting conversation so far. While we're very eager to have many more of these down the line. I think for today this is all we have time for. But before we wrap up, why don't you share a couple of HR Tech best practices, if you will, for anyone in HR Tech before we end for the day.
HR tech practices. Well, since you mentioned ethical AI, what I'll say is, since we're a little bit in the wild west of AI space right now, that people very frequently ask me, how do I know it? How do I stay up on AI? How do I know which AI to use? How do I know that it's okay? And I would say it's very similar to any technology that we use in other decisions that we do. We have to do our due diligence. We have to understand, and we have to understand the party that we're dealing with. And there are many, many great AI providers, and there are, I mean, I think something like 70,000 that are new AI companies that have sprouted up. And I can't vouch for all of them. And I certainly, it's my profession. I can't keep track of them all. And nobody could be expected to. So what I would say is sort of as a guiding principle as we go through this is to always do your due diligence and understand the party you're dealing with, understand what they're doing with your data, because the AI is not the important thing. The important thing really is what they're doing with your data. And they have to tell you this in their contracts. It helps to stay up on the laws, but I think the most important thing is if you've got a very good trusted partner who's got ethical guidelines that are very, very clear, and they are willing to contractually promise how they're going to protect and preserve your data and how they're going to use it, that you'll be fine in terms of what you choose. And the second piece of advice is, as we've been talking about it, it's very difficult to figure out. There's a million tools coming at you, and which ones do you use, and which ones are cool, and which ones are hot right now. And DeepSeek just came out, and should I use that? And
Yeah.
oh no, they're stealing my data. The best thing to do is to treat it. Just go back to business and the principles we all know,
Yeah.
which is think of the problem you're trying to solve, then go find the best tool and the best provider of that tool, and then deploy it thoughtfully and carefully like you would with anything else. Don't get blinded by the shine and glitz of AI.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us today. And until the next conversation, we wish you and the team at Paychex all the very best.
Thanks for having me, Paroma. Bye-bye.